Hello, BookTube. I didn't do a tag for you on Tag Tuesday this week, but it's Wednesday, and I have a tag for you today. I was tagged in a tag by my Marsathon compatriot, Mike at Pints and Paperbacks. He and Scott at Book Invasion, and Matt at Paperback Junkie, and Mark Richardson and I are doing Marsathon starting in Mars. We are doing a read along of all of the Mars novels of Edgar Rice Burroughs. Hope you join us. We're going to have a lot of fun, discussion videos, even the rumor of live streams. But this is a tag that was created by Deanie, and she tagged Pints and Paperbacks, and he tagged me. And I think he tagged me mainly because we are going to be teaming up for Marsathon. I don't think he thinks that I actually have any personal first-hand experience or knowledge of what the tag is about. But that's okay, because tags eventually wash out to being about books. If the prompts are good, and the prompts are good here. This is the Skyrim book tag. I had previously not heard this word except as part of the lyrics of a video by a team of YouTubers, Rhett and somebody else. I don't remember the name of the two YouTubers, but they did a video that I will link down below. It's a rap battle between geeks and nerds. And at one point they mentioned Skyrim, and I had no idea what it was, and I didn't bother to Google it at the time. The video is actually very, very funny. In a way, no one gives a Shatner about your skinny jeans. Do you even know what URL means? And it's been viewed, the last time I checked, 30 million times. 30 million views on that one video. It's probably twice that by now. But that was the only knowledge that I had of Skyrim. So before I did the answers to these Skyrim-related questions, I Googled it, of course. I went on Wikipedia and looked it up. And it's a video game, an visually elaborate video game that you can lose yourself in. It's big on world building, and that's what all of these questions refer to. I don't know any of that world building because I've never played Skyrim. And I'm not going to harp on this. I won't go at it at great length, but I would be willing to bet that 90% of the people who do this tag and who tag others with this tag would also, if I asked them, complain to me that they don't have enough time to do the writing that they say is more important to them than anything. I'd be willing to bet that's true. This or some other video game, I'd be willing to bet that's where a lot of that totally elusive time goes. That time that, gee, I just don't have any of it. Which is fine. I might point out that is absolutely fine that you do that, provided you then eliminate from your repertoire, your verbal repertoire, your conversational repertoire, that bit about, boy, I'd love to do more writing, but I just don't have the time. I'm perfectly happy with you wasting as much time as you want on video games where your participation is scripted, where the limits of what your imagination can do are extremely limited by the imagination of someone else, and where there is no end product that you can call your own. I'm perfectly happy with you sinking all or most of the very limited amount of awake time that you humans have. You barely wake at all. You spend 10 hours a day, utterly unconscious, drooling all over yourself. Or 8 hours a day, but so groggy or tired at the beginning or at the end of that 8 hours that it might as well be the same thing. And then, in your conversations with me, you say, I just don't have any time in my day for writing. Or I would, because I really like it. I consider myself a writer. You're perfectly happy to play Skyrim until you're blue in the face, as long as you eliminate that line from your repertoire. That's all. You can't do both. Okay? You can't sink in 4 hours a day on a video game and also reflexively tell people that you don't have time to write. You can't do both without being a hypocrite. So, if you want to do the one and sink in that time to video games, fine. Absolutely fine. But don't complain that there's no time. That's where the time is. And if you really cared about the things that you're not doing, you would do them instead of that. Okay? All right. There you go. But now that we're done with that, we'll get to the questions. So all these questions reference characters or concepts in Skyrim. The first one being, the Dragonborn can absorb souls, breathe fire, soothe wild beasts, and so much more. What character do you think would be capable of anything? And the character that came to mind here came to mind in an irritated way. Capable of anything, yes, but shouldn't be capable of anything. And that is the vampire Lestat in The Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice, who starts out in Interview with the Vampire, and then in The Vampire Lestat, the novel called Vampire Lestat, he starts out fairly constrained inside Rice's world building as a more or less normal vampire. Super fast reflexes, the dependency on drinking the blood of living creatures, super strength, an amount of mesmerism. All of this comes eventually from Bram Stoker's Dracula through various permutations. And for those first two books, Lestat has that. He is basically that. The vampires in this world and in most vampiric worlds will live forever, even without blood. They just get more and more torpid, thinner and thinner, paler and paler, so eventually they can't move. They'll only die if you decapitate them, or in the case of other vampire remedies, like decapitate, stuff the body with cabbage or whatever, garlic or whatever it is. And that is true for Lestat in the first two books. He has those limitations. He is a recognizable vampire. And then in the third book, he drinks the blood of the pair of supernatural beings that were the first vampires. And after that, it's like Anne Rice decides he can do anything. After that, he can hear thoughts all over the world. He can fly. He can instantaneously transport himself. After that point, after Queen of the Damned, Lestat seems to me to become someone who is basically a god, and that's not interesting. Dramatically, that's not interesting at all. Same thing has happened for those of you who are more cinema-based with the Matrix movies. In the first Matrix movie, there are parameters, and there are things at stake, and then all of a sudden, Neo becomes God. It's even referred to in the second Matrix movie. One of the characters refers to him doing his Superman thing. In other words, him having no limitations whatsoever, which kind of makes those movies boring. He does have limitations, of course. He's working inside the Matrix. but one way or another, for me, it would be Lestat, the later Lestat. The one in the first two books is fascinatingly limited. In fact, in The Vampire Lestat, there's a wonderful moment where he says, I think it's in The Vampire Lestat, where he says that humans have advanced so far in their technology, maybe they could capture me. Maybe they could dissect me. Bring it on. I want the challenge. I've never had a challenge before. I like that. And in the later books, there is no challenge. Lestat can do anything. Let's see here. Prompt number 2. Lydia is sworn to carry your burdens. Who is the most annoying side character? And there are many, 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 many. I've often found that writers will either consciously or unconsciously unload a lot of annoying qualities into their side characters because they've leached them out of their main characters. But one that I have in mind, if we want to deal with, just stick with fiction, is annoying because I don't think he should be there. It's annoying because I can't understand where he is and why he is, and that is P.I. from Lonesome Dove, who's an ex-Ranger, an ex-Texas Ranger, just like Captain Call and Captain McCrae. He comes from the same outfit as Jake Spoon, and all of these incredibly capable people. I mean, Jake Spoon might be a weakling and a liar and a philanthropist or a philanderer, but we get the impression that in his day he was capable. And P.I. is not. He's not capable at all. He's dim-witted, biddable, easily frightened, and incompetent at everything he does that isn't just basic grunt work around a camp. And I don't understand that. I've never understood that. I've never understood why Larry McMurtry needed to make P.I. not just normal, but so subnormal. The first idea would be for dramatic leavening, because McCall and Cray are superior characters. They have their gigantic sentimental flaws and foibles and whatnot, but in a hard situation, in a tough spot, they're basically superhuman. But there are plenty of other characters in Lonesome Dove who are connected with Colin McRae from their own time who aren't that and are still believably capable. Even July Johnston, the hapless sheriff in the book, who basically fails at everything he does, we still get the impression that he is capable of something. Whereas P.I., he seems borderline brain damaged. I've never understood why, for instance, Captain Call, we're told, is an exacting taskmaster. I've never understood why he would keep P.I. around and not just give him his marching orders. So I'm gonna include him. I could include many, but I'll include him. Prompt number 3 is: did someone steal your sweet roll? I don't know if this is connected to Skyrim. I of course think about The Simpsons. The I didn't do it, boy. the episode where Bart Simpson accidentally becomes a superstar with a tagline, I didn't do it. Before he does that, he sneaks up on Kent Brockman, the news broadcaster who is reciting some of his copy for the upcoming newscast. And Kent Brockman has a sweet roll on his desk, and Bart reaches up and takes it and provides a sound effect. when he takes it, he says, yoink! And Kent Brockman hears the sound effect. His eyes bug out wide. He says, yoink! And he looks down because he knows what it means. It means something's been stolen. But I guess it has a connection in Skyrim too. Did someone steal your sweet roll? What is delectable food from a book that you'd like to eat? I guess that we're told that this food is delectable, but the main thing I like about it is that it's no fuss. And that it lasts a long time, and that's lembas. The whey bread of the elves in the Lord of the Rings. These crackable, these crackers, they're pale, almost tasteless. They're certainly not savory or hearty at all, but you eat one, you feel like you've eaten a full meal, and they can last on it for a whole day. And they're very convenient, and they don't spoil or anything like that. They don't need any preparation. I would love that. Absolutely love that. That would be wonderful. I begrudge the time that I need to fix meals. I'm not a person who gets enjoyment out of doing that. I begrudge it. Usually. I mean, there is still a time that flits through my mind that I might like to get better at it, just for more variety here. But if I could just have a package of lembas, then that'd be fine. I'd never think about it again. Except for Mega Stuff Oreos, which the elves of Lothlorien do not have. Then prompt number 4, took an arrow to the knee. What character do you think would be the most likely to get randomly injured? Again, this must come from Skyrim. I don't know. Because I'm busy writing instead of playing. I'm busy reading instead of playing. Yeah, I'm busy doing that. And if I were spending the only 2 hours that I have in the day, because I've got to rest my gigantic Homo sapiens brain for 12 hours in total unconsciousness. If I only had that 2 hours outside of work, and I did spend it on gaming, I did spend it on playing games designed and created and sold to me by someone else, where my creativity can have no effect whatsoever except to please me in the moment, well, then I probably wouldn't spend my weekends telling people, yeah, I just don't have any time to write. I just don't. When it comes to a character you think would be most likely to get injured, the first one that came to mind is not a character from a book. He's from a comic book. He's one of the original X-Men, Cyclops. A lot of you will know him from the movies. And his superpower, his mutant superpower, is very Stan Lee-ish. Stan Lee, the creator of modern Marvel Comics, may God rest his soul, when he came up with superpowers, but especially mutant abilities in the X-Men world, he always tried to have there be a drawback. Not just something pleasant, but drawbacks as well. And in the original team of the X-Men, the only exception to that is Marvel Girl, Jean Grey. Can move things. She's telekinetic, and she then develops mind-reading powers. But no one knows that. No one would know that to look at her. Whereas her teammates, not so much. Iceman has to become visibly non-human in order to use his power. The Beast, Hank McCoy, is gorilla-like all the time. So he can't put shoes on, not normal shoes. He can't walk around a mall without people immediately noticing there's something wrong. His arms and legs are the same length and the same musculature. The Angel, Warren Worthington III, has gigantic white wings coming out of his shoulders. Now, he himself is handsome and wealthy, but he can't hide them, except in a painful harness if he wants to put on normal clothing. But the biggest example of all of that is Scott Summers, the leader of the X-Men, Cyclops, who, once he became a mutant in his teenage years, his eyes started permanently ejecting massively powerful red concussive energy beams. They do not burn. Most X-Men writers today forget that. Certainly most X-Men movie producers forget it or don't care about it. But Stan Lee was specific when he originally created the character, and for years afterward, that Cyclops' energy beams don't burn. They're force, not heat. But one way or another, one way or another, Cyclops can't control them at all. When his eyes are open, those beams are coming out. His eyelids, of course, stop them. And he eventually discovers that ruby quartz, this substance, that if he makes ruby quartz sunglasses or glasses or a visor or something, that will block his eye beams. No idea where that energy goes. That's never specified. It doesn't stop his eyes from emanating those energy beams. So we have no idea why ruby quartz stops it and where it goes. But one way or another, we are told many times in Stan Lee's version of the X-Men and the versions that came later. I have no idea what happens in the X-Men now. The most I can gather from the synopses that I read is that all the X-Men are now plants. But one way or another, in the classic iteration of X-Men that I'm talking about, we are told that Scott Summers, his own body, is immune from his power. So if, for instance, he were to look at his knee, take an arrow in the knee, if he were to look at his knee and lift his glasses, and his beams were to strike his knee at full force, it wouldn't have any effect on him whatsoever. And later on, when we meet his brother, his long-lost brother, Alex Summers, who also has mutant superpowers, we're told that their powers can't affect each other either. It's not just that they can't hurt themselves, they can't hurt each other either. Their bodies are just genetically predisposed to absorb whatever power that they have. But, so I'm not talking about Scott Summers hurting himself with his own power, but nevertheless, what are the chances that he would go even a year without bringing a house stone on top of his head? What are the chances that he would keep his eyes closed all the time? All the time. Or you put on ruby quartz glasses. Let's say you put on ruby quartz glasses. You're going to put them on at night? What happens if you knock them off? What would happen then? Imagine if you hit the wall of your building, the wall of your bedroom right next to your bed with a wrecking ball. The whole roof would come down on top of your head. You would get hurt. It wouldn't matter that you were genetically predisposed, that the beams couldn't hurt you personally. You would still get hurt. So I don't know how Cyclops lives to be leader of the X-Men. No idea at all. How does he shower? No mistakes whatsoever? Not ever slipping up? I don't believe it. Anyway, he's going to be my choice. Then, number 5 is Aedra versus Daedra. What is the most interesting force of good or evil or otherworldly source of power that you have found in the book? And there are a lot of them, of course, and one of the ones that I really like, I don't know if it's the most interesting, but it sticks in my mind, is from the 1933 novella or short story by Robert E. Howard called The Tower of the Elephant. One of the greatest Conan the Barbarian stories of them all, in which Conan, after many permutations of plot and many misadventures with lions and a giant spider, enters a gigantic tower in the city of Thebes where a sorcerer is alleged to have a massive treasure. The sorcerer's name is Yara. And before Conan can encounter him, he encounters a twisted and tortured and blinded weird creature, a human body with an elephant's head, alive. Yog Kosha is this creature's name. And it originally came to Earth a long time ago from an alien world, not an alien dimension, not a supernatural thing. It's Robert E. Howard directly importing science fiction into fantasy. Yog Kosha came from another world and taught Yara everything that he knew about what he calls sorcery, but it's easy to see that it could be science. One way or another, he teaches Yara everything, and Yog Kosha is the source of Yara's power. We don't know that Yara was anything much before then. After a while, Yara becomes powerful enough to capture Yog Kosha, to strip him of his spacefaring wings, to blind him, to torture him, and to suck every bit of magical ability out of him to further his own magical ability. And there's a way out in the Tower of the Elephant. Yog Kosha has a way out, not only of his own torture, but a way to gain vengeance on Yara. But he needs help. He needs a strong, sturdy barbarian's hand that will not hesitate from doing what needs to be done. I don't want to spoil the story, but it's amazing. It's just amazing. It's just what I wouldn't give for a movie version of the Tower of the Elephant. What I wouldn't give in a different world, if the Hollywood dice had gone a different way, we might be getting that movie. Might have had it last year or 10 years ago, starring Jason Momoa as Conan. If his Conan movie, which is quite good, if it had taken off, if it had struck the public imagination, then maybe they would have done. So you would have got some director or some writer to come along and do The Tower of the Elephant, starring Jason Momoa. That will never happen now. Jason Momoa is well and truly Aquaman, and will be Aquaman until he is old and gray. But we can dream. I don't know. Since his movie didn't do well and a lot of money was poured into it, I'm not sure that Hollywood will ever do another Conan movie that doesn't star Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And they should. They should. Just keep trying. They should. Maybe don't pour so many special effects into it, or maybe don't make it so expensive. If you cut the budget in half while still keeping the visual look, you will make your money back in the international market. Because Conan is well known all over the world. And what I wouldn't give to see, this is a young Conan who's in The Tower of the Elephant, so it couldn't be, my main pick for Conan right now would be Liev Schreiber, and that would only be the Conan of later years, of the mercenary leader of troops in battle. It wouldn't be the young thief Conan. You have to pick somebody else for that. But the conclusion of The Tower of the Elephant. Oh my. Anyway, I'm going to say that. I'm going to say Yog Kosha as a source of power is kind of, nothing about that story still sits right with me. It has so many unpredictable turns in it. I just love it. Okay, then number 6, it gave me trouble. Number 6, I might have to punt on. Number 6 is Tamriel is full of double-crossers. Who is your favorite deceitful or suspicious character? And I'm assuming here we mean fiction. But even in the ranks of fiction and science fiction and fantasy, every deceitful character that I could come up with is such a dramatic disappointment. Most of the ones that I've come up with are the ones that are just evil and are convincing, like the villain in Perdido Street Station, is not deceitful. The villain in that book is not trying to deceive anyone. But the ones who are being deceitful, they're so unbelievable, so much of the time, where I just don't understand anything about why they would do what they do, or why they could get away with it, why they would deceive anybody, even if they do have their own motivations. None of it ever strikes me as believable. None of it does. So I don't really have an answer to this question. I'll be interested in hearing what everybody else's answers are. Then prompt number 7 is The Lusty Argonian Maid is the hottest book ever written. I'm assuming that's a book inside the continuity of Skyrim. What is your favorite romance in a book? And for me, it's going to be the last romance that I read. I think do I have it here? I just finished a romance this afternoon, and that for me my favorite is always the last thing. Yeah, here it is. This is the new Sabrina Jeffries, who's just great. She's just fantastic. This just came out. This is The Bachelor, and the couple is Lady Gwyn Drake and Joshua Wolfe, and she is done with depending on men or needing them in any way. Her trust has been betrayed many times, and she values her independence. And he doesn't think he's going to fall in love with her, and then they do. And the typical pattern for modern day regencies is for them to fall in love with each other, then fall into bed with each other, and then fall in love a little deeper with each other, and fall in bed a little deeper with each other. And this varies that pattern a bit. And the parts of them falling in love, especially the last 50 pages, just wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. Sabrina Jeffries has such a way with words. I swear. So it's going to be them, but tomorrow it'll be something. It'll be something different. Prompt number 8 is Stealth Archer is the obvious and most practical character build, I suppose. What type of character do you think is the most useful, and give an example? And for me, the type of character who's the most useful is the one who is good at everything. Obviously, I would think. So, for instance, in my beloved Legion of Superheroes, a comic book, a 50-year-old comic book about a team of superpowered teenagers 1,000 years in the future, you have Brainiac 5, who's from Kolu. He has green hair. He's a 12th level intellect. He's the most intelligent sentient being anywhere in the galaxy. And that is the criterion by which he is accepted into the Legion of Superheroes. The Legion gives you triad. You have to have a superpower that no one else on the team has. And so Brainiac 5 is the expedition dumper for the Legion of Superheroes, and he can figure out anything given time, usually very little time. But he can't fight. He can't get along with his teammates. He can't adapt in any way. That's all he does. Something like that, not so much. What I prefer is a character who, in fiction, I'm assuming that's what meant here, can do it all. Is is Brainiac style smart and able to decipher clues and come up with plans, but who's also able, affable, personable, dangerous physically. And I think the version of that character, the one that all the others are built on originally, is Ulysses from the Iliad, Odysseus from the Iliad and from the Odyssey, who is all of those things. He's a master strategist, but he's very wily and also a great fighter. So I would include. It's boring, but I would include him. And then question number 9 is: there's more to the world than just humans. Elf, Khajalit, Argonians, and more. What is your favorite those must be people from Skyrim. What is your favorite fantasy or sci-fi race? I have quite a few, but I would think probably the people from Tivanel's world, the people from the gas giant of Tyree, in James Tiptree's novel Up the Walls of the World, which I don't think is made anymore. I don't think any James Tiptree is still in print. That's both sad and embarrassing. For my beloved science fiction and fantasy genre, it eats its own. The greats, most of the greats are not in print anymore. It's just so shameful. But nevertheless, I mean, imagine it. Imagine if we were talking about the Western canon, and I said, the question was, name a deceitful or a practically scheming female character, and I said Becky Sharp from William Makepeace Thackeray's novel Vanity Fair. And imagine how embarrassing it would be if I had to follow it up by saying I don't think Vanity Fair is in print anymore. Imagine that. No other genre. But I don't think any James Tiptree is in print. But Up the Walls of the World is about many different characters, quite a few of them. Most of them are human. But one of them is not. One of them gloriously is not. Tivanel is a 50-foot wide phosphorescent manta ray, basically. An amorphous being that James Tiptree designed as a kind of sentience that would develop in the upper layers of a gas cloud, of a gas giant like Jupiter, where you couldn't be terrestrial. You probably couldn't be all that flesh and blood. Could you be something else? And the beings of Tyree are that, and they're wonderfully portrayed in the book. So they'll be my top spot for this moment. And then number 10 is glitches. Dragons freaking out midair, giants sending you sky high. I'm assuming these things happen in Skyrim. I wouldn't know, because I don't play Skyrim. Instead, I make my own worlds. I write my own fiction. I write my own nonfiction. I greedily suck down every single spare minute of time anywhere in the course of a 24-hour day. Greedily, hungrily, all the time. Because in almost no time, in about 10 minutes, you're going to be dead. And about 5 minutes before that happens, you're going to have a chance, most of you, to look back on how you spent that very limited amount of time that you had. I have much more time than you, and it's still very limited. You wake up. Of course, you're numb and stumbling and half-eyed because you've just been in a coma for 8 hours. By the time you caffeine yourself into being semi-sentient, it's off to work you go. For 9 hours. Or more. Including commute. Where you're not doing anything creative. You're talking with people, you're interacting, you're making money, you're doing your job, but most of you are not doing anything that you would consider furthering your creative ends. And then you come back home, you're fried from doing that, of course, because it's usually repetitive and a little bit psychologically straining. You make a little food, you got a couple of hours before you go comatose again for the rest of that 24-hour period. How do you spend that time? Well, 5 minutes before you die, you're going to be able to look back at how you spent that time. And if you spent the bulk of that time playing video games, in those last minutes, those of you who are literarily inclined, those of you who dream of writing or who've written and loved it and want to write more, those of you who dream of making a mark on the world and finding a voice that will enchant readers, not just now, but decades, even centuries in the future, who don't do it, are going to come to that minute, and it's going to be pretty hard. That minute's going to be pretty hard for you. So I would advise that you don't do that. I would advise that you don't waste the tiny, tiny amount of time that you have. But anyway, I don't know what these things are because I don't play Skyrim. Because I'm busy creating my own stuff. But anyway, what is a surprising or funny or unexpected thing that you have found in a book? I, like most inveterate long-time readers, I have found all kinds of things in books. Oh my God, all kinds of things. Smashed insects. Whole smorgasbords of smashed food. all kinds of boarding tickets for planes and trains and boats of all kinds. Oh my God! But I think the most what were the words? Funny or surprising, funny or unexpected? Maybe not funny, but surprising and unexpected. At one point, it was a novel. I was reading a long novel. It's set in the Napoleonic era on the peninsula. It was, and I got, I don't know, probably six. It was like an 800-page novel, and I got to page 600 or so, and I found a note, just a single sheet of paper, and it said, "By the time you reach this point, I'll be gone." Nothing else. No name, no date on the slip, no explanation of any kind, and it struck me. It struck me more than anything in the mediocre book had. It's just, I was just. Wow. You wrote that note and you put it in this book knowing the person would be creeping towards it this whole time? Were you divorcing them? Were you going to leave them? Were you dying? I don't know. I'll never know. No one will ever know. The note cannot be traced to anyone. But I think that counts as the most unexpected thing I found in a book. And that's it. That is the Skyrim book tag, which I got through in 30 minutes, mainly because I didn't rant at all. But all I have to do is tag people. I have a few people I want to tag. Like Brianna's Library. I haven't tagged you in a long time. I don't fancy you as a Skyrim fan, but I'm not either, and I did the tag. David Murphy. I've tagged him in it's been days. Matthew at Mayberry Book Club. Jay Shea. Haven't tagged you in a while. Also, Sean Standfast. I'm pretty sure you're no more a Skyrim fan than I am. But you can see what I mean. These questions are designed to get you prowling around your bookshelf. And I'm interested in that, absolutely. So that is the Sky... Oh. And of course, Britta. Of course I tagged Britta. What else has she got to do? That is the Skyrim book tag. Thank you very much, Pints and Paperbacks, for tagging someone you had to know doesn't play Skyrim. It was still a lot of fun to think about these things and walk around my bookshelves, as tags always are. So I'm gonna upload this. I'm gonna call it quits for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.